Hey everyone, we're always trying to find these great jazz albums that we might have missed the first time around.
Albums that maybe flew under the radar a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And so today we're going to do a deep dive on one of those.
One that I think a lot of people miss.
Yeah, and this is big too.
From 1980.
By Red Mitchell on bass and Warne Marsh on tenor sax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating pairing because you've got Red Mitchell, who's playing bass, tuned in fifths.
Like a violin.
Exactly like a violin. It's very unusual in jazz. And Warne Marsh, who was a, student of Lennie Tristano.
Yeah, he was called the greatest vertical improviser, I think, by Anthony Braxton.
Yeah. And so it's really a unique album. And I think maybe that's why some people kind of missed it.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. We're going to kind of dig into that today.
Yeah.
So let's start with Red Mitchell.
Okay.
So he wasn't just a bass player. He was actually a really skilled multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah, he started on piano when he was very young, and then alto sax, clarinet, and he was in the army, actually. And in 1947, he discovered the bass, and that became his main instrument.
Oh, wow.
But he had a real diverse background musically.
Yeah, so, and his career was just amazing, like right off the bat. He's playing with Charlie Parker,
Billie Holiday,
Jerry Mulligan. He was even the first bass player at MGM in the 1950s for the studio orchestra there.
I mean, this guy was just all over the place, but you can tell he really, really loved music.
Oh, yeah.
And he eventually decided he just wanted to focus on playing jazz.
He wanted to get away from the studio work and just play.
Yeah, so he moved to Stockholm in 1968.
Which is interesting in and of itself.
Yeah, and that's where he ends up crossing paths with Warne Marsh again.
Right.
Now, Warne Marsh was a disciple of Lennie Tristano,
Right.
who was a controversial figure in jazz.
Yes, he was.
He advocated for this more cerebral approach, so
Yeah.
focusing on pure melodic lines, no cliches, and really digging deep into a smaller set of jazz standards. Yeah, he would pick maybe 5 or 6 tunes, and that's all they would work on for like a year.
Wow.
So it was a very, very intense kind of a school of thought in jazz.
So how did Marsh, with his Tristano background, mesh with Mitchell?
Yeah.
Who had this incredibly diverse background and this unique approach to the bass?
Well, their paths crossed way back. They first met in 1946.
Oh, wow.
And they even played a little bit together in the 1950s, but it was really the late 70s that they started to play together regularly as a duo.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's one of the things that's unique about this album is that it's just saxophone and bass.
Right.
Which was unusual at the time for people to record in that format.
And it's interesting, too, because, it really showcases their musical conversation.
Yeah, because there's no one else there.
Yeah.
It's just the two of them, so you're really hearing how they interact and how they play off of each other. It's just them going at it,
So what about the album itself?
Well, it's a mix of jazz standards
Okay.
and some original tunes. But what's interesting is that they're all played with this incredible kind of like taste and restraint.
It's not like a blowing session.
No. It's not like they're just, going off. It's
Yeah.
much more subtle.
Right.
They're really taking their time exploring the melodies and finding these interesting little twists and turns in the harmony. And Mitchell's fifth tuning on the bass really adds this whole other layer of complexity.
It's like he's almost creating these, like, counter melodies.
Yeah, almost like a second horn player in a way.
Yeah.
He's not just playing the root notes. He's really outlining the harmonies and creating these interesting moving lines.
Yeah, and then you've got Marsh kind of weaving in and out of that.
Right, playing these long flowing lines that are full of, surprising intervals and rhythmic shifts.
Yeah, this is not your typical bebop.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Heads and solos kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
This is something completely different.
It's much more, it's just a different approach altogether.
And speaking of different, they even tackle a Carmen Miranda tune.
Yeah.
South American Way.
Really?
Can you believe it?
That's wild.
And they completely transform it. It's not like, some kind of like, up-tempo Latin thing. They've turned it into this like really laid back, almost melancholic ballad.
Wow.
And it's beautiful. It's really quite beautiful.
And we can't forget about Warne Marsh's recreation of Lester Young's solo on Lady Be Good.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
He plays it note for note.
Note for note.
And that's a real testament to Tristano's influence.
Yeah.
Tristano was a big believer in transcribing solos.
From the masters.
Yes, learning from the masters.
Yeah,
So Marsh clearly, took that to heart, and he could play with, a lot of fire and passion when he wanted to.
Yeah.
But there's always this underlying sense of control
Right.
and thoughtfulness to his playing.
Yeah.
He's not just, going off willy-nilly.
Right.
He's really thinking about what he's doing.
And now Big Two was recorded live at Fasching,
Yes.
which is a legendary jazz club in Stockholm.
It's still there. It's still going strong.
Yeah.
And you can really feel the energy of the club in this recording.
Yeah, it's a great sounding recording.
It's very intimate.
Yeah.
But also electric, you know?
Yeah, you can almost hear the clinking of glasses
Yeah.
in the background.
It's like you're right there.
Yeah, you're right there in the club with them.
Yeah.
And it's a really special feeling.
And speaking of feeling, there's a real sense of spontaneity to this music, even though it's clearly very carefully constructed.
Well, that's the beauty of great improvisation. It's this balance between
Planning.
planning and intuition structure and freedom.
Yeah.
They have a roadmap in mind, but they're also open to, those unexpected detours and...
Those moments of inspiration.
Exactly.
It's funny, before we did this deep dive on this album, I had totally missed this one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought I knew, a lot about jazz, and this would just kind of like slip past me.
I think that happens to a lot of people, though, with this album.
No?
Because it's not like a real flashy album.
Right, it's not like
in your face.
Yeah, it's not going to grab you right away.
It's more subtle.
Yeah, you really have to like sit down and listen to it a few times.
And really pay attention to what they're doing.
Yeah, and their interplay is so subtle and so nuanced.
It's like a conversation between two old friends
Yeah.
who know each other really well.
Yeah, and you have to remember, this is just saxophone and bass.
Right.
There's no drummer. There's no piano to kind of fill in the gaps.
It's just the two of them.
Yeah, so you're really hearing them like naked.
In a way.
Yeah.
It's just their sound.
And that's what's so captivating about it,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
You're forced to like really focus on the bare essentials.
Yeah, how they build the tension and how they resolve it.
The way they build tension and release and those little tiny shifts in the rhythm and the harmony.
Yeah, the little subtle things that they do.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so special.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note too that even though it's, the cerebral style of jazz,
Right.
there's a real warmth
Yeah.
and a humanity to it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just an intellectual exercise.
No, it's very emotional music.
Yeah.
It's very heartfelt.
You can really hear the joy that they're getting from playing together.
Yeah, they're feeding off of each other.
Yeah.
And they're just having a great time.
And it's a testament not only to their talent, but also to the power of collaboration.
Yes, definitely.
When two great musicians come together, they can create something that's even greater than
What they could do individually.
Yeah. So to our listeners, if you're looking for an album that's going to challenge you,
Make you think a little bit.
yeah, that's going to reward repeated listens and careful attention, you really can't go wrong with Big Two.
It's a beautiful album.
And I think a lot of people have missed it.
Yeah, it's a hidden gem for sure.
Yeah. And you might find yourself asking, like, how did I miss this one?
I know I did.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Big Two. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.